So we've now done the tour and some photos, so we're going to jump in with presentations and starting.
So welcome everyone. It's nice to be here in person and have the opportunity to have Adam here virtually. All the new systems, it gives us a lot of opportunity.
Sorry, I'm just going to share the screen efficiently so that you can see Adam at the same time that we see the presentations all together. There we go. Perfect. All right.
So I think a lot of what I'm going to go over today will certainly be repetitive. You'll hear it again, I think, through a lot of the training that we're going to receive. Not a bad thing necessarily, but if you have questions throughout it, please just stop. We can have kind of an informal conversation. We can chat about it. My section is going to be relatively a high overview, and then obviously you'll get into each department individually. So certainly if there's anything that council wants to chat about along the way, we can stop and do that. So I think, as you're aware, obviously, the council is a governance body. You're elected officials, 5 positions on our council, 2 that sit at county council. Just like every other lower tier in Peterborough County, the mayor and the deputy mayor do sit at county council. There was legislation passed a couple of years ago that allowed us to appoint an alternative. So should the mayor or the deputy mayor not be available, an alternative could be appointed for the term and could sit in as required. It's entirely up to council whether or not you want to do that, and if it's something that this council is interested in, I can certainly come back with a one-page report, give you the details, and you guys can have that discussion at that time.
Just out of curiosity, on that, excuse me, would that be just appointing someone to a council position and one of the councillors here would take over that deputy mayor position, or how would that work?
Yeah, it would just be appointing one of the other council members to act, yes, in the event that one of them couldn't attend.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that we always
I thought
have.
you meant if there was an illness, whatever, we had to, someone couldn't come back, or someone got forbidden in an accident, they weren't back. Would one of us move into that position, and then someone would be appointed to fill our position, or do we just go with the floor from that point on?
So I think from a county perspective, that specific legislation is just to appoint one of the council members in the event that one of the mayor or deputy mayor can attend. You have 2 votes at county council, so right. Should somebody not be able to be there, it just provides you with that additional representation. Certainly internally, if there was some extended absence, we'd have to deal with that here in the capacity of the council members we have. But this is specific legislation that just allowed for that, because historically they didn't allow for any other member of council to sit at the county council table. So that was specific just to the county.
Yeah. So is this for a prolonged period of time, or is it, let's say a county council is going to miss one meeting because they're away or something like that? Is that the time when someone would be appointed to go in their place?
Yeah, and I think we could, generally you would appoint somebody for the term, or you could do it, for a 2-year term and then do somebody else 2 years later. And that's it. We could bring something back to give you those options. And certainly it would be in the event of an illness, or just somebody had another commitment they couldn't attend, or if they were away for an extended period of time. All of those situations then would allow Douro-Dummer to have representation there in its full capacity.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so currently, as the legislation stands, notwithstanding strong mayor legislation, which you will hear lots about, I'm sure, in all of your training, the strong mayor legislation has come in specifically only to Toronto and Ottawa at this stage. Although we do continually hear comments about it being unveiled to larger municipalities. I don't think that we will see it here in the immediate interim. So for now, the definition of your chief administrative officer, a municipality may appoint a chief administrative officer who shall be responsible for exercising general control and management of the affairs of the municipality for the purpose of ensuring the efficient and effective operations of the municipality and performing such duties as are assigned by the municipality. So that new legislation does make some changes to the CAO definition and the CEO, who is the mayor. But for our purposes, we will maintain this definition until we're instructed otherwise. So just an overview of what the CAO duties are. Obviously the policy development, being brought back to council for approval, but certainly in draft format, being able to bring that to you in discussions and ensuring that you're aware of policies are in place. Human resources and performance management, generally, I will oversee it as a whole, especially in a policy situation. We have taken a look at our performance management and how we want to do that moving forward. I specifically will do the performance management for the managers, and then they will manage their staff. Certainly ensuring council's decisions are properly executed. So again, the decisions that come out of the council table, my role is to ensure that I have the staff deployed to execute all of those decisions. Economic development, this one, you know, it's certainly something that doesn't get enough attention. We do have Leisha on board, who's doing some work with the county and sitting in I shouldn't say the county, in an organized format with other municipalities and the county, sort of talking about initiatives that are common to all of us. But I think as we go through our strategic planning session, you know, we can talk more collectively on economic development. The mayor generally has a large role to play in those relationships. And certainly, you know, I will facilitate between the council and our staff. I'm acting as the deputy clerk and deputy treasurer, so it is attached to the CAO title. In the event that Martina isn't able to be here, I certainly can fill in and act as the clerk to ensure that our meetings run smoothly. The deputy treasurer, that's more or less just for signing. If Paul isn't here, somebody is going to have to do the budget, and it likely will be me. So my strengths are certainly in the clerk capacity and not in the treasurer capacity. The Municipal Operations Center, in the event of an emergency, I will come in and generally oversee and take management of that in conjunction again with the mayor. Often the fire chief is also right there to oversee the operations. Develop programs and bring those forward to council and committees, similar to the policy development, you know, ensuring that we have streamlined programs and ensuring that council and committees are following the direction and that we have a seamless for them. Work with management team to move projects forward within the budget. So once everything is set, you know, we do have processes in place that we go through from a management team. We do meet weekly on Wednesday mornings. So we've scheduled that so that we do that following our council meeting. We also have the report of capital project status, which we review. Council gets that as well. So we can see what is outstanding, what needs to be done, and we try to create timelines to make sure that we're completing these projects within the budget year. First point of contact for media, again, myself and the mayor. Certainly if it's something that is specific to the fire department or some other department, I will ask those managers to participate. But often it will come through myself, or the mayor will speak on behalf of council to ensure that there's one point of contact and the message is seamless. Creating and building relationships with a variety of stakeholders. Again, I think that's, you know, our neighboring municipalities as well as our other levels of government, ensuring that you know, we have that relationship back and forth. There's lots of things that those come into play, and I think whether it's business owners or elected officials, it's important that we create those relationships. And then long-term strategies for plans for success. Again, I think that will come out as we do our strategic plan. You know, council will be able to set that direction, and then our role as staff will need to carry it out. Any questions on that before I go on? Anything that...
Do we have anybody in particular that we look after grants, trying to dig in and find something, or anything we can possibly get an answer on?
Yes, so generally it falls under our finance department, and I know Paul, and he can speak to it a little bit more. There's an organization actually that we have that is currently searching for grants for us. So they will also do the grant writing if something comes up. Once it gets to the point of grant writing, there's a percentage that they take based on a successful grant, but they are currently scouring all the time. Paul's given them kind of our overview, you know, what the municipality is made up of, where we might be looking for money, and they are constantly looking at any new grants and providing him with that information. So grant writing, I mean, that's a bit of a niche. So some of the smaller grants, you know, we will do in-house, but if it's something that was quite large, we probably would use this firm to carry that out for us.
Does the mayor or anybody sitting on any of your department head meetings once a month or every once in a while or something together, or is that just your group and that's it?
Generally, it's our group. I think historically, the mayor did sit in when I came on, I expressed I didn't feel there was a need for the mayor to sit in. It's an opportunity for management to sort of have a conversation about what's happening, and certainly after a council meeting.
No, that's fine.
But if there is something that is pertinent, I would have no problem including.
No, I
the
just
mayor.
didn't know whether, and this is just in my mind, like if it was once a month, a different counselor sits in on one, like, nothing, if there's anything in particular, specific that council doesn't need to be privy of after a meeting or something, like that, or discussion about it, and then not that I'm trying to get rid of things, but I just thought it may be good for us too, to just, once in a while, I'm not saying every meeting once a month, once every 2 months, just a different counselor sit in on one meeting, just to see how it goes and what happens, and, it may be refreshing for us also. I'm just throwing that out there. Maybe not, I don't know.
Certainly something I think when we go through our strategic plan, if we want to discuss that further, my only concern in that would be that there may be a member that feels they are pertinent to information that somebody else didn't hear.
Exactly.
And like I said, historically, I think the mayor was included.
And we have our committee of the whole, so I think that kind of covers it anyhow, but that was just a kind of I thought I remember the mayor saying about sitting in it, and I thought, is it really necessary? Is it good for the rest of us to try one? But I don't necessarily have to have it happen, no, the committee of the whole is good.
We essentially go through our department updates with all of our management team. And then Martina, usually I save her for last because then she can go through all of the council directions. So anything that they haven't captured that they're not already working on, she can then say, okay, as of last night's meeting, make sure that you're aware of this and this and this needs to be done. And then sometimes it's very social conversation, like, when are we having a Christmas party? So.
Are we?
We also once a month do all staff meetings. So it's nice with Zoom to be able to include everybody. So we try to bring all staff in because there are things, especially with myself coming on board and some changes, and we went through the compensation review, and then we went through the bylaw. So that impacts all of staff. So our staff is small enough that it's nice to be able to include everybody when we can. So we've tried to do that once a month as well.
And that was going to be a question later on, was whether we were going to have a Christmas dinner this year. We would have one in like 2 or 3 years, and I know it's kind of short notice, but.
We haven't planned for a Christmas dinner, again, at the direction of council, if that's, we haven't planned nor have we budgeted for.
Right.
But if council wishes us to do that, then we can do it, or we can.
But it wasn't just council, it was like volunteer.
Everybody, that's right.
Which is kind of short notice now to try and get something together.
Yes. I was only here for last Christmas, and we had decided we would do just a internal staff lunch. I think we kind of had all that coordinated, we were ready to go, and then they shut us down.
Right.
So everybody ended up being virtual, and we had a Christmas lunch virtual. So it wasn't until recently that someone had said to me, oh yeah, we did this big Christmas dinner with all of staff and all of council, and I was like, yeah. So certainly if it's
Appreciation to
something.
volunteers.
Yes. If it's something we want to look at for next year, we would be, we'd have more time to coordinate that and happy to do so. So our current vision and mission statements, as well as the goals out of the strategic plan. So this, our vision statement dedicated to building our future while respecting our past. Our mission statement, the Township of Douro-Dummer is committed to providing a high level of effective and efficient service throughout our municipality. We promise open, responsible leadership, enhancing the quality of life, and building for the future while respecting our heritage. I think the strategic plan goals, they're there. We've historically been using them, trying to identify them on our staff reports. So something to look at, I think, as we move forward with our new strategic plan. And I want to make sure that we have, the goals that this council wants to set, certainly for the next 4 years, potentially, even some broader ideas, and that we're referring these back to each and every one of our staff reports so that staff stay on track with what the vision is of council. Not to say that these aren't still valid, but I think they're good to look at as we move forward to see how we want to modify that. So our org chart. I won't go through everything. Certainly there's been some changes over the last year. We've added a planner. We added to the building department with our full-time administrator being Leisha. Dawn has been here since shortly after my arrival. Shane just came on. We do have that contract position, which was posted, currently vacant, for a building inspector. We're going to take a look at those resumes and see where we need to fill some gaps right now and what makes the most sense, but we're looking to have that position filled on a contract basis. Animal control, which happens to be with the Humane Society. We've done some changes in public works with some additional equipment operators, and obviously have a labor, some are seasonal and some are, we have one full-time, I'll leave Jake to speak to that specifically. We brought some of the snow plowing in-house, so we've added a little bit to that roster. Certainly we have Martina in our admin clerk role and Paul in the finance role as well as their admin support. Again, some changes in our finance department with that addition of the finance and payroll clerk being Nicole. Other than that, I don't think there's any major changes, just a little bit of shifting and trying to align some of the admin specifically with the department heads. Because I think they were doing cross-training, which was great. They were all trying to learn everything in the municipality, but I think it was tough because some of the management didn't have support. Martina was also wearing 3 hats, so she needed the admin support. So now that we've managed to bring in a planner and a CAO, hopefully she's feeling a little less pressured and she's back to having a new, and then she'll speak to the additional position that we've been added to committee, in addition to summer students that we
just I think in the past, a lot of cross training because people were shoved into some different positions. So yes, so there's cross training that was happening, but is there a plan for if there's enough bodies or to do the work to allow for some of that cross training? Or it always seems like it never happens until something happens, if you know what I mean. And then so then people feel. I think people feel pressured or it's like, well, I don't know what to do, if you know what I mean. And that kind of isn't fair to, I don't feel that's fair to employees. I think if we can definitely help anybody that's in that position to maybe go, I don't know whether there's that opportunity either sometimes. I realize that. But if there is that opportunity, I hope that as an organization, we can allow some people to get some cross training, and especially new people to just make them feel comfortable in if something happens, if somebody's out for a day, or to be able to help the flow of the business for everybody else as well. That's just my comments.
No, I think from an admin standpoint, the way that the front reception area is structured, that happens regardless, right? Because
Correct.
They're covering off lunches, and so they all have a general understanding. We've also had some changes, right? We had one mat leave that came back. We have, another one off, and we have somebody backfilling, and Nicole's a new position. So there's been lots of new people coming on where we're trying to get them up to speed. But also to your point, when I look at somebody who is here that potentially is covering a contract, I've said, let me know kind of what you want to learn, because that person, if we can't keep that person, then they're going to move on. And if nothing else, I definitely want to foster an environment where they're learning and they're capable of moving on from here with some training and some knowledge. So I think we sort of do that without any formal cross training.
Right.
But I also think we're still in a little bit of transition with our staff, and although we're filled and everybody is working great, we do have one on leave that will be back. So and then with a new position in finance, so we're still, I think, trying to sort out exactly what that's all going to look like. So.
Just a quick question. Just a quick question, Alana. I'm guessing that, pardon me, some of the issues that might arise when people are away or any type of emergency, that would largely be addressed in some type of contingency plan that exists already as well. Is that fair to say?
A specific contingency plan, I would say that's something that we don't have in place. So if there's, I will also say I'm confident if we had an extended absence right now, we either have enough backup or we have management that can fill the role if it's a lower level position. It's tough sometimes just to bring somebody in, we have run into situations. We've been fortunate where we've had people that had knowledge of what we needed, and we were able to, bring them in for these one-off projects just to keep us rolling. But I think when and I keep going back to the admin, so I think different from, our Public Works Department or our Parks Department, which is probably better equipped if it's one person that's missing to be able to backfill and ensure that things are getting done. But from an administrative standpoint, Again, I think they work really well together in the front. They're constantly covering off for each other, whether it's illnesses or vacations or just lunch coverage. So I'm not concerned that we would be in a position that we'd have gaps at this stage if anybody was to go. Does that answer your question?
That does, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions about the org chart?
Sorry, Alana, if I can just throw in one thing, my one concern or thing that I've noticed with a very formalized cross-training program, should one exist, is you run the risk of people becoming a jack of all trades and master of nothing, which is far more detrimental in the long run. But as you say, with the admin staff being a relatively small group that are sitting in a room together all the time, just by nature of that arrangement, they've already got a good understanding of what they're kind of the baseline items anyway.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think if everybody is sort of doing a little bit of everything, you know, when I first came on, a lot of our senior management, our manager of public works, our recreation, they didn't have any admin support. So in turn, they also probably weren't doing the amount of admin that I would have expected as a CAO. I think Dave was doing a lot, partly because he had been here for so long. You know, he knew everything. So it was easier for him to roll through and do that. With myself coming on, you know, my thoughts and my visions about how it operates are different. So certainly there are some changes, and we've tried to align some of that admin specific to departments. But at the same time, you know, a lot of them have already been exposed to other departments, or they get that exposure just on a daily basis. So our service delivery review, some of you are aware that the service delivery review was completed just prior actually to my arrival. The consulting firm conducted the review, provided us a report, outlined some of the recommendations. There was a lot of information in that service delivery review, and we certainly will come forward at one of the early council meetings with a full chart on what has transpired already. So what the recommendations were, what we've already done, what we're working on and what we're doing to work on that. And then some that, you know, we haven't either started because whether it's financial constraints or other issues, or some things in there that, you know, we've come back and just said, we just don't think it's a priority. Whether or not that recommendation is a priority in future, it may be, but at this point it's not a priority. We did have a committee established, so we had some staff members as well as the council representative. We met regularly to go through those lists. I think we did bring something to council at the very beginning of this year, just as an overview, so we will do that again so that this council is aware. And it's, again, something that will be good as we move forward into our strategic plan, just to take a look at what we've accomplished already and where we might be going. It is a healthy document. It's a big document, so if you haven't had a chance to review it, it certainly will take some time and maybe multiple times of going over it, but staff will put something together so it's all concise and in that chart format, so it's easy to digest. It certainly has been great for me because coming in as a new CAO, it gave me some specific direction on where that council wanted to go and what the expectation was. So I think we've conquered quite a bit in it, actually. I think when we go through it as a whole, staff feel like, wow, you know what, we've done a lot. So it's a great document to work from, and you know, we can certainly modify it as we go forward if there's changes in this council. So code of conduct, you're going to get full training, I think, specifically on the code of conduct. Certainly legislation came in that required us to adopt the code of conduct as well as appoint an integrity commissioner, which wasn't required prior to that legislation. I recently attended a conference in British Columbia, and they are just starting with this now, and you know, talking about the integrity commissioner, and it's interesting just, you know, all the challenges that they're facing and the questions that they have. And I was able to share that it's something that was implemented here. Like anything, I think there's lots of questions about how it's done, but right now we do have our integrity commissioner. He'll have a lengthy training session with him, and you know, it's always good to have that reminder of the code of conduct and what the expectations. So moving on from the code of conduct, again, for staff, you know, it's important that we also abide by a staff code of conduct. And at the same time, the expectation from the public, it also needs to be respectful. And although, I'm confident that my staff are performing in a respectful manner, and I'm, one of the things coming on that I've been very, I won't say forceful, but, talking about is the customer service level. We are a municipality, and there is an expectation out there that we're going to provide optimal customer service. I don't, especially in our front line, I don't think there's anybody in that, front line that doesn't. I mean, they are all amazing. They are so friendly. They are so helpful. We don't always have the answers. And I think through COVID, there was a lot of people that weren't happy with the changes, or, having challenges with COVID in general, and just happened to be taking it out on whether it was municipal staff or restaurants. I mean, you saw notices all the time when you went out, please be respectful of the staff. Most municipalities didn't take the stand, restaurants did, but we started to continue to see it. And, it was via email, it was at the front counter, and I said, it's just not acceptable. It's just not, I can appreciate, people don't always feel like they get the service that they feel they deserve. But there's a process in place to take that to another level, and it's not yelling at the frontline staff. So I've told them all, I don't care if it's on the phone, I don't care if it's in person. Absolutely, you do not have to subject yourself to that. I am happy to come out, I'm happy to take that call. So I think they're comfortable with that so that they don't feel that. But we have gone ahead, we did do the press release, which I'm sure you saw. We have these posters done, which we put up at all of our facilities. And even if it's just a simple reminder as people come in, just be respectful, and there's no room for any kind of bullying or anything like that. So I will say I'm very strong on that, because I think our staff sometimes need to be not protected, but they need to know that they have the support behind them, whether it's from senior management or council, that they're not expected to be subject to anything like that. So I heard this question tonight. Sorry. Well,
No, if they're like,
and I've given the staff the permission to do that. If you can always say, I'm going to put you through to the CAO. If that doesn't de-escalate it, then you are within your right to hang up the phone. I've done it. I've had, somebody who was profanity and like verbally abusive beyond, and I just said, I'm really sorry, but our conversation is over. And when you can call back and speak to me in a respectful manner, I'm happy to have further discussions. And I hung up the phone. We've talked about doing some training around that, because as much as I'm, customer service, I don't want them to feel like they have to listen to it, although we have to give them the tools to understand how to try to like de-escalate it, and eventually, what is the threshold, where is the cutoff point, but you just don't have to any longer. So
most times if somebody is wound up that bad though, as soon as you hang up on them, they get it.
Yes.
Most times. True.
So human resource management, as much as it falls on the CAO for the responsibility of the performance management and generally overseeing the hiring and dismissal of employees, we did, coming out of the service delivery review as a recommendation, engage with SHRP. So they do some of our HR, we do our onboarding of new employees, so any of the forms and that sort of thing. So they will assist us with any kind of job ad. They will do our reference checks. So once we've gone through the interview process, we provide them with the potentially successful candidate references, and they will conduct those references for us. And then they will take over with the onboarding. They do track our training. They also provide some training modules so that when new staff comes on, they can do some of these things electronically. We obviously have a virtual file with their performance management documents in there, as well as any training that they've taken. Currently, we're using this system for our sick time and vacation time, although I know Paul is working on something alternative. So we may look at our relationship with SHRP to determine where they best serve us. We did go through all the policies, and they were a great help to that. We also, when I first arrived, we had been audited by the AODA accessibility, about our accessibility procedures and policies. So they were very helpful in getting those up to date, so we were compliant. They also will provide us with HR advice. So if there's an issue internally that it saves us going to a lawyer. Obviously, if there's something that needs to be addressed on a larger scale, we will engage with a lawyer, but they can give us that day-to-day advice if we have questions. So we may look at this and we may scale back depending on what we have from a finance perspective with our timesheets and our sick time and vacation time, because currently SHRP or HR Live does not manage any of the timesheets. So there's still a lot of work being done by staff to submit those timesheets, and Paul is working on something to streamline that process. So there will be a little bit of overlap, so we'll revisit the relationship to make sure that we're not paying for duplicate services that we don't need.
So is this for part-time people as well, like,
Yeah, I mean, we generally will have SHRP or HR Live do the onboarding. There's less interaction with that part-time person because there's no vacation, there's no sick time, there's no request coming in. So we still keep it generally to the full-time staff, but there's certainly capacity if we want to.
And just to clarify that, the onboarding you're talking about, like any of the witness training and safety mandated training we have to go through, or
Yes.
CCCA
Yeah.
harassment.
And their
events.
forms, their financial forms and that kind of thing, we do all that. So here's a nice little chart just about the governance and decision-making, and I think, we've chatted about that. Generally, the senior management will provide recommendation in consultation with myself, provide it to council, so council will set those policies and adopt the applicable bylaws, and then staff will administer the policies with my oversight. The signing authority specifically is always the mayor and clerk. If there's bylaws and that sort of thing, those are your two statutory signing authorities, unless we delegate otherwise. Just a fancy slide on our department overview, and you're going to have each of the departments come and provide you with an overview specific to their departments. Resources, so there's a number of organizations, provincially, also federally, that we rely on for information. AMO, most of us have heard, they generally will filter through all the information that comes through the province. Rural Ontario Municipal Association, again, more specific to the rural municipalities. Good Roads, at one point they did their conferences combined. I know they tried to split, and then there's talk about them going back together, I'm not sure. The Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks and Treasurers of Ontario, they added the word managers, I'm not sure exactly when, because the association generally was growing to the point that we had a lot of management as well. This one happens to be the one that I'm currently the president of until June of next year. Then I will move on to past president, and my requirements there will be less. So obviously, I think it's a great organization. It definitely provides clerks with quite a bit of resources and information. We really try to get information out. We've ramped up our legislative department as well, so we're also taking some of that information from the province and trying to filter that through to the staff. The treasurer component, there's always kind of a struggle between clerks and treasurers, because treasurers also have the financial, Municipal Finance Officers Association, so MFOA. So there's no real specific organization for just clerks. There is for the treasurers, so we tend to focus sometimes more on clerks. Lots of resources that come out that if you haven't taken a look at them, they will come in hard copy still to the Office of Municipal World. And then our ministries, Municipal Affairs and Housing, ministry websites. There's a number of obviously ministries that we deal with. Generally, Municipal Affairs is the one that has the oversight for municipalities. Unless there's any questions on that. That's it. Okay. Any other questions for me?
Just one. Quite a number of years ago, and our committees had to do it, to get a police check. Council had to do it at one time, and I myself haven't done one in a long, long time. Is that something we should look into, so we're on board with all of our volunteers and so on and so forth?
Yeah, there's no specific requirement in your capacity as an elected official, but we can certainly provide you with that information. So
yeah, we just did it because we were asking our committees and everything, on our committee members to do it. So without asking them to do it, council should also
yes,
do the same.
yeah, we can certainly I know there's been some changes back and forth about how those are
Yeah, I
submitted
think
electronically, so.
like at one time Linda did it for us. She did it right here in council.
Did she?
Yeah.
Okay,
That was a number of years ago, and I think that was as the clerk, but I don't think that's even on books anymore, but I do think it's something they just puts a link forward to our volunteers that, hey, council's doing the same we're asking you to do. So
yeah, no problem at all.
Well, I think I'm gonna do it online.
you do it online?
Yeah.
I think you can. I think during COVID, they really streamlined that process too, because there was quite a backlog, so.
Yeah, we can look into it anyway in the near future.
I'm pretty sure the city is doing it online, so I'm sure you
Oh, they-
certainly will. Thank you.
Thank you. Martina, do you have, are you up next? I sure am. Fantastic.
Adam, you can hear everything fine, and we can hear you fine, we know.
Yep, I can hear everyone perfectly there.
Perfect.
So some of the items I'm going to be talking about are similar to what Elaine has already spoken about. And then of course through your training, you're going to hear a lot more about procedure and policies and things like that. So again, I'll keep it pretty high level because I don't want to bore you guys. And just so you know, all of these slide decks from today, we will get after the meeting. So you'll have those as resources. So the clerk's department is generally made up of myself and Anu. She's our legislative services assistant. We do have various summer students and co-op students that we get throughout the year. And just so council's aware, we are currently in talks with Trent University to get a political science student to come in for the winter term. So we've got an interview set up with them, but they're quite keen to bring the student, and they'll be here in the office with us. So great experience for them to get to see what the municipality does and further their policy work that they do at the university. And then great for us because we'll have a fresh face that we can get them to pick up some work and do some of those projects that we don't have a chance to do. So the clerk's department is pretty busy. We're responsible for all of the agendas, minutes, documents for all of council, various committees, committee of the whole, committee adjustment, planning committee, all of those. We also act as a resource for you regarding meeting management. So if you're chairing a meeting and you need assistance, of course we're here for you. Similar to the mayor, we changed the table around so that I can sit right next to our new mayor and be of service. We also manage the procedural bylaw, which was just updated this year. That's quite a large task, but I think we've got a really good document in front of us. Everyone should have a copy of it at their desks as well, and it's available online. But if you have any questions about it, how it functions, please let me know, and I'm more than happy to assist with that. And of course, we also deal with accountability, transparency, and governance. So if there was a complaint to our integrity commissioner, the integrity commissioner would reach out to me to ask me to get them any documentation they need, or recordings, things like that. So very active in that. I also do all of the municipal Information Protection and Privacy Act responses. So if someone files an FOI, that's kind of the field that we hear, that comes to me, and then I proceed for research and packaging the information, determining what can be released, what can't, working with the department that FOI belongs to. I'm also maintaining the township's policy manual and ensure that it's up to date. Through the service delivery review, one of the big things that the review spoke about was our policies that they needed to be updated and modernized. So we have been actively doing that, and we'll continue to through this term of council as well. I'll talk about your eScribe system a little later on this presentation, but I have uploaded the most used policies into your accounts, so you have access to those digital copies with them, so that you don't have to necessarily email me in the middle of a Saturday afternoon to find out what that policy said. We're also responsible for records retention bylaw and the maintenance of correspondence for the items. And then we also issue lottery licenses. The Treasury Department helps us out with that. They do a lot of the finance side of it. There's a lot of calculations that need to be done for those licenses. So very grateful for their assistance through that. But that's another task we do that was kind of forgotten about a little bit. Ongoing tasks, all of the notices related to public meetings come through our office. They're planning related. Christina does the heavy lifting there, and then we do a review and the dissemination. We manage all of the records and information for the township. Of course, we run the election, which we just had, so I think that went quite well. We put some new policies and procedures into place and worked really hard to make sure that it was accessible for everyone. Of course, as part of our OETA compliance, we stepped up how we address that legislation, and we had that audit, and so SHRP was able to help us put the right policies in place. And so now we're following through on those policies and making sure that we're offering that higher level of service now. We also ensure the transparency and accountability in the council process. So some new things that have changed. We record our council meetings now. They're available on live stream. People can go back and watch the recordings at their leisure. We also have a new way to ask to be a delegation, but I'll talk about that a little later. And that's also part of our transparency project. So. We also act as the commissioner of oath, so if someone needs an affidavit sworn or they need certain documents signed off on, we can offer that service as well. And just a little bit of stat for the work that we've been doing. So in 2022, we've created 39 council meeting agendas, 385 council resolutions. Some people are up to like 390 now, but 70 bylaws, 13 planning meetings, and committee adjustment agendas as well.
Sorry, just a question.
Yeah.
Is there a charge for taking
For commissioning? Yeah, it's $10 right now. Yeah, so it's pretty reasonable. Significantly less than anyone else in the area is offering.
Not much. Okay. All right. Thanks.
And there's 4 of us in the office that can be commissioner votes. So if I'm not available for some reason to act as the commissioner, Elena can do it, Paul can do it, and actually there's more than that because Donna and Caroline can do it. So we're basically always available to offer that service. There's very rarely a time that we don't have someone available to get that done. And in the past, especially during COVID, people maybe were housebound or had limited mobility or were concerned about physically coming into office space. So we have done that in the gazebo, outside, people's driveways. So we're pretty flexible with that service to meet people where they're at to make sure they can get those documents in request. Just a little bit about the term of council. So of course, the various positions we've got elected here. The mayor and the deputy mayor, they both sit on county council. So they do that dual duty. And of course, we had that presentation last week about the split role and how that works. So this term of council runs from November 25th until November 14th of 2026, which feels so far away, but is really only 4 years from now. So just with the procedural bylaw, as I mentioned, we did do a big overhaul of this document. It took us almost a year to go through various edits and additions, and we worked as a committee and then the council to review everything. So you do have the document in front of you. Some of the things have changed. We've added new definitions to bring some clarity to issues that created roadblocks in the past. We changed the schedule of the meetings just to be more transparent so that the public knows when those meetings are taking place. Also changed the way we provide notice of those meetings. Some of the roles and duties in the meetings have been updated to meet the new standards for transparency and accountability, and to flesh that out. We've updated the rules of debate because sometimes those cause some roadblocks and confusion and a little bit of conflict in the council. So we cleaned that up so that it's much easier for council to know how they can interact together and how they can move meetings forward so we get those decisions made and transparent and respectful. We've also updated the delegation section. I think I was live coming up about it, so I'll hold on to that. And one big thing that we've added to the procedural bylaw that didn't exist for Harold and Ray especially when you were on council is the consent agenda. So it's one of the first items that comes up on the agenda, and the consent agenda is made up of information items that don't need any action. So these are notices of meetings in other communities that you may want to be aware of. Just updates of things that don't need decisions, but just to provide you an update. Typically, we're moving things like if we purchase something through an RFP and there is a requirement in our procurement bylaw, to provide notice to council of the purchase. Purchase has already been done, it's just to provide you notice. That's the type of item we would put in the consent agenda. So you're aware of it, it's been communicated to you, but council doesn't need to go through those items one by one and add additional time to the meeting. So, and
If I could add,
yeah,
council can still speak to it.
yes.
Yes.
So you can hold or pull that item from the agenda, and it gets added to the main agenda, and then you can ask questions or speak to it, or.
Does that have to be at the start of the meeting that you asked?
As it comes up. When that section comes up, say 7A, whatever that is,
Okay.
so we can adopt the whole work at once, or you can say, I want to take out 7B or 7C,
To speak
and actually address it, and then it will be on to like section 12 somewhere.
Yeah,
around
so it's usually
So
they get moved to
we'll move
the
down
correspondence
and come up
section.
later in the year.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just one way to get you information you need, but move the agenda along and make it a little later and cleaner.
Through the chair, I want to ask Martina, right off the bat, you're the acting clerk.
Correct.
When are you full clerk?
I think that's up to other people to make those decisions.
Okay, so you've been acting clerk for a few years?
I think I got this title last year.
Since last year?
Yeah, 2021, I think I got
Okay,
this.
so that's a decision of council down the road?
Yeah, I think it would be for council and the land to talk about in closed sessions. Just talking about those procedures in the procedural bylaw. I just took some of the terms that we use a lot: resolution, motion, bylaw, notice of motion, vote. I just provided you a little bit of text there about each one. I also do have cheat sheets as well that I can provide to you. I know the bylaw is quite long and dense, so I do have cheat sheets that I can provide. Little action items and kind of gives you a flow chart of how different items move through the agenda. So I'll provide that in my email with all of the slide decks as well. And I know that Fred and Nigel will be talking a lot about this as well in their presentation, and how to have those respectful conversations at the council desk, and how you use these different tools to get the work done. That'll be coming up as well. And of course, if you want to meet with me one-on-one about that situation, I'm happy to do that as well. Yeah.
I may be jumping the gun here a little bit because you've got things up there. Pecuniary interest. We declare it at the meeting, but we also had a written form that
Yes.
also had to be filled out.
So in eScribe, we do have paper forms that you can fill out if you want to, but in your eScribe, you actually can declare your pecuniary interest in eScribe and complete the form there, and then it creates an automatic digital record, and that's how we are now holding it. So even if someone submits a paper form to me, I actually go back into eScribe and I manually upload it into
Hopefully that'll be on
eScribe.
the training coming up, because I haven't
It
seen
is.
that part yet.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I was gonna say, if we had the paper one, I was gonna ask you to send us each a copy of a Word document, we could keep it on our desktop, whatever, and fill it out, and print it before we came to that particular meeting.
Yeah.
The spots in each grade in the training, that works even better.
Do you require signatures?
You get, because you filled it out with your eScribe account, you've logged into and used your password, it acts as an electronic signature on those documents.
I historically do both. I didn't realize. It's like print it, sign it, and fill it out online.
Yeah, which is-
But that's still fine, you know, to do the print and sign thing,
Yeah.
whatever, yeah.
Yeah, as long as we get them and we're able to record them and provide that register to the public, then we're fulfilling our obligations.
Okay, thank you.
I've just got some common questions here that I know come up quite a bit. So when will you receive your agenda? The agendas go out to council on Thursday before council by 4:30, and they'll be sent out through your eScribe system. Notice goes to the public on Fridays by 4:30. So you get a day in advance of the public to read your agenda. And just we want to give you that head start in case you start getting phone calls, you haven't put time to review or reach out to staff, just to give you a bit of a head start on the reading, because it can be dense.
And if I can just interrupt, so when it goes out through the eScribe system, you also get an email that it's been pushed out, so you know, you don't have to keep logging in and checking it, kind of thing.
I need an update on the e-scribe system.
Yeah.
Because it was just coming in when I left.
Yeah, and so we have that virtual
Yeah.
training.
Pardon me?
We have that virtual
Right.
training.
They want to reveal what it is.
Yeah, and so you can watch the
Yeah,
recording, and then
okay.
after you've watched the recording, if you have specific questions or you want me to sit down with you one-on-one, you know, you can bring your tablet in and we can run through it together as well.
Okay, thanks for,
No
I'm
problem.
sure I'll.
It's, once you get the hang of it, I think you'll enjoy the new features. And
We were just starting working with it, and then I left, so I just kind of, I'm foggy.
one of the things that we were really pushing for this term of council is there is a library function in eScribe. So we have enabled that library for you so that you can go and review past resolutions. You can search by keyword. And then I've also created a digital resource library in eScribe for you with common policies, different documents, strategic plan, service delivery review, various studies we've done, and policies that are frequently asked for from the public, so you have access to that whenever you need it. And then if we have other items that you feel are important to add there, let me know. Just to give you those extra resources so you don't feel you're so overwhelmed and stuff to ask those questions. So all of our boards and committees do need to follow the procedural bylaw. Once we have those committees in place, I do go around and have meetings with them, talk to their chairs, make sure they understand, talk about their agendas, and just the actions they're doing. And as part of our strategic plan, one of the exercises we would like to do is review our committee structures, which committees we have, who does what, and then make sure that each committee has a terms of reference so they can understand their roles and responsibilities and help the council make decisions. So what do I do at the meeting? I usually first prepare the agendas, get all that information out. I also take all of the minutes. So I do rough hand minutes, because I find that's the fastest, and then Anu types them up for me in the eScribe system, and then we review them and push them out. I also act as a resource, so if anyone has questions about procedure, policy, past resolutions, things like that, I'm always here to answer those questions and push that information out not only to you, but to the public as well, who are watching or here in person. And then I run the digital meeting as well, so making sure that I'm and then I'm here for, of course, the mayor who's chairing the meeting. We can provide assistance with any questions or purposes. I'm not going to go into the defer motion for reconsideration of stuff, because I don't want to steal Fred and Nigel's thunder. I know they're going to be talking about those. But after their presentation, if you still want to talk about them, please let me know, and then we can have those one-on-one conversations, or we can talk about it as a group, perhaps at a committee of the whole meeting, one of those less formal types of functions that we have. So quorum for our council is 3 members, so as long as we have 3 members present, we can hold a meeting. There are procedures in the procedural bylaw of what happens if the mayor's not available, the deputy mayor, and so on. So again, we need quorum minimum of 3, but we need 2 of those members to vote the same way to actually have a decision. And if someone abstains, let's say we have 3 members, and 2 members vote in the opposite way, and then 1 member abstains, that decision fails. So we need to have 2 active votes the same way to make the decision.
Does that then come back to the next council?
Potentially. Potentially, it would be a case-by-case basis to see what the motion was and what if it was based on a report or a discussion. So I'm kind of touched on this a little bit. So your agenda software is eScribe. Everyone has accounts. The agenda comes out electronically. You just put the timing there. It says 5 p.m., but we do it by 4:30. And same thing for the public on Fridays.
And our e-scribe, is that going to be carried on from the before the password, or is it?
Everything will
changed to
stay,
this?
no, everything will stay the same.
Stay the same, so Ray and Adam,
They
Daryl,
have all
have
the
new
accounts.
ones?
Yeah, that's right. Just one thing to mention with eScribe and just minutes and agendas and things in general. So for those council members who are joining us this term, if there's items that were in closed session, we do not provide you those closed session minutes unless they directly relate to something we're doing today. So you weren't on council at the time, so you're not privy to that information. But if we were having a discussion that related to, a meeting last year, and there was items in closed session that you needed to know about, we would bring that information forward too. So that's how we make that determination, and that's based on the legal practices and advice from our So we talked a little bit about the consent agenda, but I just added a little slide here so you kind of understand the flow of information. So typically, I would review all the information, put it into the consent agenda. We would have a motion for all items. It's information only, correspondence, that's only information. So you typically need to make decisions. But if you wanted to have a discussion about one of the items, or you felt a decision did need to be made, we can have that item pulled for discussion, and it would be moved to the correspondence section of the agenda. And we would have those discussions. I know that's new, and so I just want to make sure everyone understands. And once you see it in practice, I think you'll likely move forward. We updated the rules around our delegations. So there is a 6-month rule, so you can only present, you can ask for delegations twice in a 6-month period, and then you have to wait an additional 6 months if you need to present on that topic again. Let's say someone comes in and their first delegation is about stop signs, and then they want to come back next month and they want to talk about yield signs, and then they want to come back in 2 months and now they want to talk about culverts. That would be fine, because each one is a separate topic and separate information. But if one person or one group wanted to talk about stop signs 3 meetings in a row, we would not allow that, because it's just not a good use of council's time. And we would communicate that to them, and the rules are really transparent on the website. We do have a form on our website that people can fill out, so people can fill out a paper form if they like, and it is part of our procedural dialogue, but there's a digital form, and so they can do all of their attachments, pictures, videos, PowerPoints, all right there, and send it in to us, which makes it a lot easier for that flow of information. And the person who submits their delegation that way also gets a confirmation that it's been received by us, so they know that their information has been transmitted. So delegations get 10 minutes to speak. We allow 2 speakers, so if it's a group, they can have 2 spokespersons from their group. In our procedural bylaw, we've added language in there that council does not need to make an immediate decision on delegations. You can receive the delegation, of course, and thank them for their time, but if they're asking for a request, you don't need to make a decision on that request the day of. I know that was practiced in the past, but council may need time to ask staff for budget considerations or the long-term impacts or how it will affect operations, things like that. And so having that language in our procedural bylaw allows you the time to get that additional information before you commit or make a decision on a delegation request.
Have we put a time frame on that? Like, I mean, we don't want people to wait 6, 8 months to get a decision, kind of like that, within the next 2 meetings.
I think it would be council's direction to staff that you would like a report back on this topic in X amount of time.
On each individual
Yeah.
item, yeah, okay.
So we would leave that to council to make these decisions, so it can be flexible to whatever.
Yeah, some may take a lot longer than others.
That's right, it could be a really big thing that we need to get a study for, and perhaps it does take a year to get back to them because we need to get engineers into network knowledge. So that gives us that flexibility. And there is no time limit for council's questions. So, people may do a 10-minute delegation, but it turns out council's about 20 minutes in questions. You have the flexibility, so long as the chair allows the conversation to continue, to ask those questions. I just put a little slide here, just kind of the difference between the mayor and council and the rules of debate and decision making. So the mayor acts as the presiding officer, also called the chair. They call the meetings to order, adjourn meetings, they call votes the question, which also means the vote. They decide the speaking order, so 3 council members raise their hand at the exact same time, the mayor will decide the speaking order. And they'll also decide if questions are privileged and orders. And then I just put some information with the council. So prior to speaking, you do need to address the presiding officer, so that may be the mayor, it may be a chair, it may be another council member who's stepping in for a meeting. So you address the presiding officer with whatever title is appropriate for that moment, and then they will then speak to what the discussion is. You're supposed to remain in your seat until there is a result of the vote. If you get up in the middle of a vote, then it's like you're abstaining from the vote. So make sure that you stay in your seat, whether we're in person or on Zoom, make sure you stay there until the vote is complete, so that your vote is cast appropriately, is how you want it to be. Of course, don't interrupt the chair unless there's a point of order when everyone is speaking. Very rarely do we have point of orders, but they do happen. And in your procedural bylaw, you'll see a list of what is a point of order type question and when they can be asked. And I'll give you that cheat sheet that you talked about earlier too, which kind of puts that in more plain language for you to understand.
Sorry, I see you asked a lot of questions, but and some of them are for my own benefit, some of them are for new councillors, and a combination of. And I know in past meetings, it kind of flows back and forth. Sometimes it'll be, we have to have a motion on the floor first and second before we can discuss it. The next time we're doing discussion before there's even a vote. What is the proper procedure on that?
Great question. So you could have the questions like, could you, a council member, I'm going to use an example. So staff present a report on stop signs, because that's just an easy thing to talk about. So staff present a report on stop signs. A member of council could then ask through the chair, could staff please clarify how many stop signs they're asking for? Or are these stop signs going to be the typical stop sign shape? But if there's a discussion about the decision or the recommendation that's on the report, then we need a mover and a seconder to have those discussions.
And then the vote will decide one way or the other.
Exactly. So you can ask some clarifying questions before, but the actual meat and potatoes should happen before the vote.
We'll get a seconder, that's off the table.
That's right.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
And I know Alana already kind of spoke about this, but just our push to embrace civility, especially at the council table and when we're on Zoom, and even when we're in person now, we are going to be recording and live streaming. So it's just important to remember that people can see your face and your body language. I know council meetings aren't always the most exciting, and sometimes the discussions can get quite heavy, and so just to be mindful that your face and your body language do tell a story to the public and to your fellow council members. So just, be aware of how you're portraying yourself. Remember that we're all a team and we're all working to make the township a better place. We may not always agree on how to get there, but our end goal is always the same. And just be cautious about your tone and sarcasm. Those things, in person may come across as quite jovial, but sometimes in a recording, they don't come across as well. And so we just want to remember that things last forever now. And then, of course, just be proud of the work you're doing here and some changes as well. And if you need staff, we're always here to support you through that. That's all I've got. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Any other questions from council?
One more for me, please. And I don't know whether it's for you or for Alana or maybe a combination of them. It's not really a question. It's we ran into this year in lame duck, and I know that came up earlier in the presentation. We always seem to fall into that, it's like 2/3 or something like that. Well, there's 5. We don't have a 2/3 kind like that. Is that something that could come up at clerks and treasurers or CAO, AMCTO, something like that? Something to kind of steer the government into making it more, depending on how many councillors you have. Like if we've got 11 and it's a certain number, it's a quorum kind of thing like that. Well, that's 3 out of 5. The 66% thing doesn't work for 5 councillors. And a lot of townships around here have 5 councillors, so we all fall into the same thing. And it's kind of an oddball that, I don't know, it always seems to irk me kind of like that as to why have they just set a specific percentage on it when if we all have the same amount of councillors across the province, it'd be different, but we don't.
Through the chair, it's a good point. I don't know the advocacy piece of that to lobby the government. I'm not sure that it would be something that they would entertain. I mean, we do have the ability to pass a delegated authority bylaw, which then gives us some flexibility. But you're right, in a 5-person council, one person is potentially not coming back through window, and it can be an extended period of time like we experienced this time. So I haven't historically, I know Martina's sitting as the chair of the Legend Policy Committee with AMCTO, so I don't know if recently there's been any discussion about late duck through the council process, but that's probably, could be potentially a good spot to start with something.
Just a curiosity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it's it is odd.
It is, it is a strange piece of legislation. At the policy committee level, we have talked about the effects of lame duck and how best for municipal councils and staff to support councils through that period. But it hasn't been an advocacy item. But I can bring it up and see if anyone else has problems with it or if there is things. I know for us, we brought a report quite early to council and provided lots of notice about lame duck and how it functions. So we did a preliminary report, I think it was in the spring, just saying that this is something that's on the horizon, this is how it works, and then we provided an updated report in, I think it was in August, once we made the first determination whether we'd be in lame duck, and then we brought another report in the fall. So we did our best to keep council informed each step of the way, and I think it's hard to advocate on a provincial level because each council in each community is going to have different context and different service levels and different decisions they're trying to make. But it is something we can talk about because it does flow from provincial legislation.
Through the chair. But also, you as a CAO have the ability during the lame duck process, I believe, to make decisions, right? To keep the continuity of the business going, and whatever council was adopted for the for spending money, you got to stay within that.
Yeah.
So is there a problem with? Has there ever been a problem with lame duck? Being in a lame duck position to keep the business going, I guess. Do you know, is anybody aware of anything that has happened during that period of time to cause an issue?
Through Mayor Watson, I don't believe that there's been an issue. There is provisions, again, to have that delegated authority bylaw. So the lame duck provisions restrict you from spending anything over 50,000 and removing any senior officers from the municipality. It does allow, though, in an emergency to go beyond that 50,000 if required. So, I'm sort of two minds. We did do the delegated authority bylaw, which gave some flexibility in that lame duck period because we knew ahead of time, we knew it was going to be a long period of time. We thought it was sensible at that time to put those provisions in place. But at the same time, from a CAO level, I don't necessarily want to be making those arbitrary decisions when my council's in a lame duck position. So as much as we put that in place, and I don't believe it's been an issue, I think, again, in an emergency situation, we're able to make those decisions if we have to. The restrictions are limited. It really probably comes down to the senior staff component in that situation where it might be restricted, but a delegated authority would not address that.
One last thing, if I may, through Madam Chair. And I did go to Dave Smith's office, and I think Martina and I did talk to him with the last election. A lot of people in the village didn't get charged because PO boxes are not part of the application. But even if you go online and check your status and stuff like that, PO box on not only a street address, but my mail doesn't come to my street address, it comes to the PO box. And there was a lineup upstairs. Oh, I didn't get one. We didn't get our cards. And from what I understand, it's because our mail was a PO box. Like I said, I don't get mail at 1388 I don't. It's no mailbox, there's no nothing. So I'm online on the provincial site, nowhere to put PO box in, nowhere else. That's something that maybe through talk to something like that. And like I said, I did go to Dave's office and spoke to him briefly. Dave was pretty busy, so probably didn't go on the list of things. But I mean, any correspondence from government to the councillors or anyone, if it's in the village and stuff like that, and there's a PO box, that needs to be on there.
And I was going to say, Martina, just to be clear, you're talking the provincial election, its impact becomes the voter registration versus municipally.
The municipal one had it.
Yeah, so through Madam Chair, I think Councilor Watt was referring to the provincial election, and there was quite a bit of kerfuffle in more communities with folks that have PO boxes and getting their cards. The municipal election is different because the municipality gets our data from impact, and then we internally, before the election, before the cards are printed here, Staff, we actually went through as best we could line by line to catch any discrepancies. And we have a software program that we use to analyze anomalies and bring issues to our attention, so we were able to capture that, and we had no problem with PO boxes in our location. I know in going forward, Elections Ontario and MPAC are working on amalgamating the provincial list and the municipal list for future elections. And so I think that's supposed to be in place for 2026. And I am sitting on that committee that working through those issues. So and we have talked about PO boxes and the potential pain point, along with things like school board registration and some of those other issues that are very particular to municipal elections that don't come up in provincial elections. So there is a group looking through those issues as well.
Good. And it isn't just provincial elections and stuff either. I mean, a lot of my mail gets returned because I finally do get it when I phone 3 or 4 times a year from the zone. There'll be a line across it where you want to add it in pen and pencil, PO Box 51, but it's like, that doesn't work. My car insurance was that way. Even my income tax. I got a notice, oh, you have a new address. No, I don't. It's changed thing. Yeah, very frustrating.
Canada Post can be frustrating indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. No other questions from Martina's presentation? Awesome. We are a few minutes ahead of schedule, that's right. Are you ready to move on? Chief Anderson, you're up next.
You want me to track there, so you can all want to talk about
If
it?
you want to, wherever you're comfortable.
Yeah.
Well, that's natural for you to be up there. It'll be a tough to see it. It'll take me out over here.
Just take me a second to get your presentation. Sorry, apologies. I have to get used to remembering that on my screen, if I screen share something, it doesn't necessarily screen share in Zoom. So apologies, Adam, and anyone watching. I just need to follow the actual steps to do this properly. Yes, fine, perfect. All right, there we go. We're ready.
All right, Adam, are you picking me up from way over here?
Adam, are you able to hear Chuck Pedersen?
Yep, not a problem.
Thank you.
You want me to wait for there?
You're good. Carry on.
Oh, there he is. Okay, well, I think everyone in the room knows me, but I'll just introduce myself anyway for those that may be online as well. So, Chuck Pedersen, I am your fire chief and emergency management coordinator. I do have a full-time sort of administrative assistant, so myself, I'm the only full-time, as well with Jeff that you've met upstairs, working with the fire department. So my time is split between emergency management and the fire service. Jess's time is split between fire service, emergency management, and she's taking on Caroline's role as the alternate CEMC. And then she has about 10% or so that she gives back to the township for other duties as assigned, and some of her social media and stuff like that. I do have a deputy chief who is not full-time. He just kind of piecemeals what we need to do. He does fill in for me in my absence. Works out very well for us at this time, and he's in charge of our training portfolio, and then also fills in when I'm not available. So that's working well, but as we kind of carry on with this, you'll see that there could be future pressures on that system that we have. As far as our volunteers, we do have just over 60 firefighters. We try to have a roster of approximately 15 per fire station, so that's kind of our goal. Am I doing slides here?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. I just
Too many screens.
okay, so I guess just a little history lesson. I'll go back one, please. Sorry. Just a quick history lesson. Like most fire departments across Canada, we were created as we were separate, Douro Ward and Dummer Ward. It was really just a bunch of people that got together and thought we should do something and try to prevent fires and do what we can to help mitigate those situations. So a lot of that, in that time period, a lot of things were kind of begged, borrowed, and stolen, and hand-me-downs or retired equipment that was out of service from a larger full-time department. And that's kind of how things were created. 1955 is when the Douro Ward Fire Department was organized. It was officially passed in bylaw in 1956. And the fire station was actually across the road in autonomy South Monaghan, but it's still in Donwood. So obviously we've moved into our own municipality, our own space since then. The Dummer Ward was created in 1974, and we took over and purchased the old schoolhouse that's still here. So it's a little bit tired, but it's still where we work out of. And we kind of expanded from there. I'm not going to go into all the details as we are going to do a tour of the stations and save that for them. So as regulations were introduced, things became more stringent on what we had to do, and requirements were here, and the retirement of service equipment that was in service kind of no longer made the cut. So we transitioned in. Honestly, some of the stuff is even recently been taken off trucks that were around for many moons ago. So we work on those things, and we can try to have up-to-date equipment. A lot of the stuff does have a shelf life, and they have to meet certain standards, so that's why they get retired. The fire service can kind of be looked at in two ways I see it. Firstly is obviously the protection of life, property, and the environment, which is established in our bylaw that we'll talk a little bit about later. And the secondly is the cost side of it. We kind of look at it as it's the people's business, the taxpayers. So the insurance side would say that you're saving money out of your left pocket by having a fire service that can supply you with a tanker shuttle accreditation and a certain level of service that we have chosen here in the past to try to maintain, so that our residents and businesses keep reasonable insurance rates. So those savings that they're saving out of the left pocket, sometimes almost pays for it. In some instances, could pay for more than the fire protection costs through their taxes. So it's depending on the situation where you live, obviously that will change. A lot of those accreditations are within 8 kilometers of a fire station, so if you're beyond that, sometimes your ratings, depending on your insurance company, will be a little bit different. So it's not a paintbrush across the whole community, but that's kind of how it works. Next slide, please. So these are our 5 fire stations, but currently we have, you can see on the screen, Station 3 has been closed for a few years now. So we had troubles safely rostering enough people at that fire station to deploy a safe response. And it made more sense. You can see a little bit on there, Young's Point just to the north is a fire station that Selwyn has, and the one that's in Lakefield there that you can also see. So we went through automatic gate agreements with Selwyn when we closed that fire station, and that's been serving us well. So if you see reports and stuff, you'll see stations 1, 2, 4, and 5. It's not that we don't know how to count, but we just haven't dealt with that because it does affect our numbering system for everybody, and people have their, the firefighter number and coats and helmets, and so instead of changing all that, we just chosen to skip that number for now. Sorry, my page is going. So we do work with other municipalities as well. So we have automatic gate agreements and mutual aid agreements. So what is an automatic gate agreement? That's basically an area that we just decide that a certain township is closer, just like what we talked about with Selwyn. So they are being paged at the same time we're being paged, and that's why we call it automatic. There's no waiting time. It's just automatically paged. All of our dispatching in the county is done through Peterborough Fire. So that gets deployed, and their station's responding because they're closer than we are, but we're also responding. So the intent there is that they're only going to be there for up to an hour. We take over as the home department arrives, and then they get to go home. Mutual aid is a little bit different, so it could be, you could have an automatic aid call that turns into mutual aid. So let's say we had a significant fire or something like that, that was in an automatic aid agreement, both departments are gonna go, then we might say, you know what, we could really use a couple extra tankers or whatever to shuttle some water. So that mutual aid would then come into effect after that first hour. So that's done as a reciprocal basis at a no charge rate for mutual aid, and that's the same as if we get called in, you know, for any other township that may require some assistance because they've used up all their resources, or it could be some standby coverage because all the resources are, like for us, if we're up in the northeast corner, we have little protection. It's very far to go to get back to the south west corner, so we would bring in mutual aid to help cover off our calls while we're busy doing those things. So the automatic aid, there's a fee schedule set up in our agreements. The mutual aid is a no-cost reciprocal. We help other people, they help us at the time of need, and that's how it's always been, and it seems to work well. We do have a property, and another reason why Station 3 may stay unnamed for now, we do have a property in Douro-Dummer that historically we have reserved that from selling that piece of property. I believe it was an old schoolhouse too, but we reserved that one in Douro-Dummer as a potential third station or fifth station, new Station 3 or a fifth station back again. So that could be a future, it's a big gap area that we have there for a distance between Station 5 and 4. We do have automatic aid agreements with Hospital North, so the North Fire Station does head up County Road 40. They don't quite get the Douro-Dummer area for coverage, but just south of that. So that's just a future spot that if we have enough growth, that could be another Station 3. So you may see that back one day, and then we'll know how to count again. The rest of the station stuff I will leave, but for our tours, I won't bore you with those details until we get around to visit them, and we'll talk more about those stations at that point. Next slide. So our fire apparatus, we'll also see this on the tour, but I just thought it'd be worth mentioning. We do have 13 fire apparatus, 3 boats, and an Argo that we have in our fleet, so those are what we have to serve the community. So they do different things for us at different times. The boats we try to keep in the water anytime it's, basically we moved the boat this year and had to break a little bit of ice to get it out, so we try to keep it in shoulder seasons as long as possible. That's a lot of the times when contractors are out on these islands, so we want to be able to provide protection to them as best we can in case there's an injury or an issue or whatever. So it's been a bit more challenging through this pandemic. So working at home being a bigger thing, we've had a lot of people saying, I'm staying on my island all year now, so what kind of services can you provide? So, it's, they are treated like an island. They, through an insurance perspective, they would be considered unprotected because there's no access to them 24/7, 365. We'll talk a little bit more about that in our ENR bylaw. But the addition of our Argo has been a huge help in making that stopgap to get in between those seasons, because if it does go through, then it's designed not to initially, anything can sink. Right now it's the Titanic engineers, but it's designed to float in most instances. So that helps us protect our firefighters, and we have had several calls that we've taken that out, and a lot of patients, even medical calls. So our response, we kind of do a little bit of everything, and this is a little bit boring to cover, but I think it's important for you to understand. So in our ENR bylaw, which stands for Establishing and Regulating Bylaw, it lists all the services that you as council previously have set. This bylaw was updated in 2019. So if you don't like that level of service, or you think there needs to be something changed, that's kind of where we have to go back and make those adjustments. So I will go through it. It's a little bit lengthy, but I will just cover it just so that you know what level of service that we're providing. And this is also for the public to know what they can expect. If it's not in here, and they can't expect us to fill out the service. So we do have interior structural firefighting and or explosions. We do emergency response to water access properties, including islands. Those properties access via private roads, private lanes, or private driveways with the following limitations. Emergency response to water access will be limited to safe travel and environmental conditions. Response times should be expected to be longer and lack of identifying a proper 911 number location from the caller could result in even longer responses. So if in the opinion of the fire chief or my designate, unsafe environment conditions exist, no services shall be provided. Only fire department apparatus designed for entry on a frozen bodies of water shall be allowed to be utilized, aka our cargo at this point, or we do have a couple inflatable rip crafts that we use that we can, they're little miniature mini boats, if you will. Emergency response to properties access via private roads, private lanes, or private driveways may be limited by the condition of such road, lane, land, or driveway, including the ability of such road, lane, or driveway to support and accommodate fire department equipment and vehicles and apparatus, and the failure of the owner of the lands upon which the road, lane, or driveway is located, or the user of such road, land, or driveway to maintain such a road, lane, or driveway in a condition that is passable with fire department equipment, vehicles, and apparatus. It's basically just saying there's a lot of private roads in our community. If they're not plowed, if they're not maintained, if they have a sinkhole, they don't deal with it, they can't expect the same service. If we can't get there, we can't get there. We're obviously going to always try to do our best, but they can't expect that same level of service if they don't do their part. Marine firefighting, transportation incidents involving vehicles. We have a very, very small section of train on Highway 7 that we have a track on our boundary at Highway 7, but it's other than that little section, we don't really have a railway in our area. We do have some up that we supply automatic aid for in the Havelock, Belmont, and Dune area, but that would end up being their primary response in the end. Aircraft is, we never know when that's going to happen or where they may crash. And obviously watercraft. We also do grass and brush firefighting and other related responses. We do have agreements with the M&R Forestry Division for a section of our municipality that's a little bit challenging to get to, primarily in the north of the Peterborough County Forest. Where the trails kind of end and it's a little bit more difficult. So we have an agreement with them which reduces our rates in case we have to call them in for support. We do our emergency medical response, vehicle accidents, extrications, and vehicle fires, farm, home, and industrial accidents, public assistance calls, hazardous materials at the awareness level, rescue services in fire and other than fire situations. We participate in our community emergency plan. We do technician level based ice water rescue, surface water, but we do not do swift water entry. Assistance to other agencies, so we are police partners, EMS, people like that. We do high angle rescue awareness level, confined space rescue awareness level, trench rescue awareness level, and search and rescue. That's speaking about inside house for rescue. Mutual aid, automatic aid, which we talked about. Joint service agreements. We do review propane facility risk and management plans that's set out by regulation 44008. And we participate in the Peterborough County Specialized Rescue Unit. We'll talk a little bit more about what that is, but that team provides some specialty rescue pieces that we talked a little bit here that we set as awareness level. So this team helps us go beyond that awareness level in those instances. And I'll get back to that on a later slide. Then our fire prevention and public education, we do those services and inspections, the education, and our fire scene assessment investigation. So that's kind of what our level of services is to the community. So if they ask for something different than that, it's technically, you never want to say no, but we also can't do the level, like if you take a hazmat, technician level, that's, we have teams in Toronto and Ottawa that we would call in through the provincial Provincial Emergency Operations Center. That's not something that we're going to be expected to deal with. So we call those resources in, but the public can't expect us as the local fire department to deal with something like that. If we have major collapse issues, there's a Hussar team that is deployed also through the province that would support us. But so stuff like that, we just want to make sure that everyone's understanding that we do our best in situations, but we have to train and equip our fire departments and our people to meet the level of service that council has set. If they wish to do something more or less, then we have to talk about that to see what the impacts would be, the training levels, equipment, and stuff like that. So, where are we? Next slide, please. So, in the community, when you sign up to be a volunteer firefighter, and that we use that term loosely, depending on what legislation and act you're looking at, it's probably the most complicated occupation, if you will, to define. But we're involved in a lot more than just emergency response. So here you can see some of the things that we're dealing with is we support the Lakeville College School Polar Plunge that they do as a fundraiser. We participate with the Lions, Warsaw Lions annual fundraisers that they do for a benefit. We're Santa Claus Parade, Remembrance Day Parade, Canada Day, not parade, but I guess sort of ceremonies for Remembrance Day, a little short parade. Canada Day, we do touch a truck events that we're involved in. So we're trying to be out in that community. And I put in this state of emergency declared because sure, our fire departments were out there responding as part of responders on the initial days of, I don't know how many numerous calls that we had during that May storm. But then after that initial emergency calls are over, then it's in that recovery phase. So, that's helping the community and going back out there and assisting our public works crews and trying to clear roads so that we have access for emergencies in the event they come. So those are some of the things that they do above and beyond. I would say that they serve in selfless ways and go above and beyond what they're really signing up to do initially to help provide that's really a community service in this perspective. Our next slide, please. So fire prevention and public education. You say you met Jess upstairs. Most of you probably all know her as well, but she has taken the courses to become, we're going to talk a little bit about certification, but she has taken the courses to be a public educator, and so she's one of our team members. We have a couple others as well that have been here from experience. So we do go into the schools during Fire Prevention Week. We visit all the classrooms and bring them messages. You can see are there heroes in your home? Those are door hangers. That's part of our smoke alarm campaign that we have been a little bit halted with the pandemic. No one really wants to see at their house. We're getting back to normal a little bit, but so if people weren't home, well, we tried to make sure that they were protected. We would leave those hangers there. We do have some contests. You can see there on the right side of the screen. We do Swim to Survive as well. So grade 3s in both classes. It's a collaboration that we have through the city as firefighters coordinating that, and we participate in that. So there's sessions that we go into the classrooms with paramedics, police, and fire, and then there's some pool sessions. So it's delivered to all grade 3s in our community to make sure that they know what to do in the event that they do fall into a body of water. We do have 2 people that are going through the inspection courses to try to become certified to help with inspections. Right now, especially since the pandemic, we're really just responding to what the complaints and requests. So we're meeting our legislative requirements, but not a lot of proactive over the last couple of years with everybody not really wanting you to come into their home or business unless you really needed to. So hopefully with that added training, we'll be able to get back into doing a little bit more proactive. But we are meeting our legislative requirements, so we can certainly do better in that field. Our next slide, please. So our training, we have kind of two paths for training. We have our new recruits, and we typically send our new recruits to the Norwood at the training center, and they go through firefighter 1, firefighter 2, and then they do a hazmat piece in October, and that gets them the ability to be certified. So certification was something that came into effect July 1st of this year. New legislation for us to try to manage. It will be a little bit of an impact for us, but we do have 4 years to implement plans on how we're going to be able to achieve this. We're still working through that right now. So after their initial training, we have about approximately 30 or so, maybe some extras in there for medical, depending on the year, on their requalifications. But about 30 training sessions that they attend as well annually. And that's in-house. For continuous education, whether you're going to be, an incident commander, or an incident safety officer, or an officer position, there is extra training that we send them through. We do try to coordinate that through the training center as well, because we don't have enough people to create our own class. So with all the municipalities participating between our county and mostly Northumberland County and a couple other ones that come in from a little further away, try to create those classes that they can participate in. The training center in Norwood is also a recognized regional training center. So you may know or remember that Ontario Fire College closed their doors officially as a campus. So these regional training centers are trying to pick up that slack, and we've been in business there since 1984. Us as a municipality is a member of that training center, and the fire chiefs sit on there as a board of governors. So we are trying to work through, it's been working really well since 1984. I think they've done a really good job at managing and being a good place to train. So I think there's some lessons that we learned, maybe some from the province to us, but I think we actually have a lot to offer the province on how they roll out their regional training centers. There's a lot of new ones because of the impact of fire college, and we've been doing this since '84, so it works pretty well. So it's an important piece to remember to help and support. That's pretty much training. Next slide. So we talked a little bit about our specialized rescue team. So this team is made up of 7 of the municipalities in Peterborough County, so all but one participate on this team. So we have a few members from each department, ranging 4 to 6 members per department that make up this team. And it was designed in the I think it was about 2005, the government came in with a $50,000 grant. And some of the fire departments decided that we should put a team together to deal with these low frequency, high risk situations. So we deal with confined space, we do ice water and surface water rescue as well, and high angle. So those are and we are a member of OSARVA, which is the Ontario Search and Rescue Volunteer Association. So we would get called in to assist OPP if they have an extended ground search that they can't find a missing lost person. So we go in and support them. It's not deployed through the fire department dispatching typically, but they would call either myself directly, or sometimes I go through dispatch, say that we need 6 people, or send us everybody you can. We have had 3 calls in the last year for that search, and it has been successful. We did find someone here just in Aspen-Lenore that they spent time. You figure with drones and dogs, you wouldn't stand a chance and still need people, but even after all those attempts, it was our team that found the elderly person that had dementia, was able to safely bring her out. So those are kind of what we do. So it does, like I said, at our level of search, we talked about a lot of these things at awareness level for Douro-Dummer, but we also participate, and this is all the technician level. So we're really kind of an insurance piece for all the townships, so that we aren't putting firefighters in a situation where they have to do more than they're trained and more than the equipment that they have. So that's kind of why this team exists. I do manage the team, managed it for a few years now. The cache of equipment is stored in our Warsaw fire station, and then there's deployed out to whatever area it's going. So it used to be, before I took it, it was run by the chief in North Martha, and that's where it came, the equipment came from there, but this is a little bit more central to the entire county, so it does make sense to be here no matter who's running it. So that's kind of our, that's the SRU team. Next slide, please. So the Firefighters Association, they do represent the needs of the firefighters in a non-union environment, but I would say due to good relations and support, their focus is primarily towards firefighter station wear, so they help alleviate the cost of the township for station wear that they have, because they pay for that. They're a partner in our dress uniform, so we have an agreement that the council passed quite some time, I think it was 2011, 12, somewhere around there, that if the firefighter wanted an official dress uniform, it was a three-way split. Association, the person themselves, and the township help pay for that. They also help in support of specialty equipment such as ice water rescue. They were the ones that purchased our Argo trailer, hand tools, lighting, power tools. In the past 10 years, they've contributed over $30,000 in equipment, plus the cost of some of the clothing and stuff that they do. So their only fundraiser now is the fishing tournament, and after a 2-year shutdown, they celebrated their 35th year running the fishing tournament. They used to have a boot drive before the lights went in, the 26th, but it makes it a little bit more tricky with the lights. So right now, that's their primary, or really their only fundraising opportunity. But they do help give back and are able to keep whatever costs they provide back to us off the burden of the taxpayer. So it's a good relationship to have. Our next slide, please. The Fire Protection and Prevention Act. This is kind of where the rubber meets the road for the fire department. So you talked a little bit, heard about legislation from our previous people. So this is where it empowers council to establish a fire department. So this is where all that power comes from. The Act provides us with rights of powers, entry, establishing county coordinators, inspection powers, enforcement, a little bit of cost recovery in there as an option, and also the enforcement of the Ontario Fire Code. It does allow us to create those automatic aid and mutual aid agreements that we talked about as well. So that's kind of the workbook that we work out of a lot. There's the Act, and then there's the code. The code is what we do with our inspections, making sure that everyone's complying with, really it's a maintenance of the building code. So the building code establishes what needs to be in a building, like your exit lights and fire alarms and smoke alarms and CO alarms. And the fire code comes in along and makes sure that all those things are actually still being maintained. Next slide, please. We're almost there. The Health and Safety Act. So as you can imagine, the fire department, fire service is a little bit unique in the way of being captured in the regular green health and safety book. So there's a committee they call Section 21 committee. So that committee basically focuses on trends and issues that have happened. Nothing happens till something happens, and then they make a regulation for it, right? So this is a committee that tries to be proactive on trying to get ahead of the things that could injure or kill firefighters. So they work with that committee. The Ministry of Labor is on that committee as well. So although it's not directly a Health and Safety Act legislation violation, they do use that as an enforcement tool. We do have the opportunity to comment. We get notices of new guidelines that are coming out. So we try to participate in those and supply some comments to help shape it to make it reasonable. Sometimes it's accepted comments, and sometimes you just have to live with it, like some other regulations that we have to deal with. And then the last slide, please. So like I said, another role that we take care of is our Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, and that's where we, our township emergency plan that we've had for quite a number of years, and we review it and update it, and we participate with each other in the different municipalities and back to the county. The county is participate in our emergency plan as well as an upper tier to help. We're all declared, they kind of act as that conduit, to make sure that if everyone's requesting front-end loaders, that we can't do that, so they help try to see what each township has for supplies that they can do, and then also what each township needs. So we work together with all of our municipal partners. We do have agreements that, in the event of emergency, you're activated in the Emergency Operations Center, and you can't be expected to be in that room continuously. So we have agreements with each other that I may go and fill in somewhere, and someone else may come here and fill in my role, because you just need to, even though people don't want to take a break, when they're in emergency, you do need that rest period. So we do have agreements to help each other as well. So just a little bit about, I think, Councilor Rabu mentioned about contingency plans in an emergency. So I don't know if this is part of your question, but I'll talk about it anyway. So we do, if we're talking about a declared emergency, we do have a business continuity plan. So that business continuity plan sort of sets the priorities, of all the levels of service that the corporation says that we do. If we have a declared emergency, it allows us flexibility to reassign workers, which we had those opportunities we did declare twice with the pandemic, and then also with our May storm. So when we do those declarations, that gives us flexibility to redeploy staff without saying that's not fair, because that's not what they signed up for. It does allow us to do that, to work with those, give us a little bit of flexibility. And then the township, like I said, every department is, obviously there's priorities. So, making sure that there's life and safety protection, making sure that the roadways are clear are going to be one of our top priorities. And we may utilize other staff to help assist that. So we were fairly fortunate in the pandemic that we didn't, with the strategy that we used and the displacement of people and different tunes and shifting, we didn't have a severe impact on losing a significant amount of staff all at the same time. So we didn't have to do too much of that. So there is also, so we do review that business continuity plan. It's really internal. It's not so much external. So that's kind of how that is. So hopefully that was part of your question. I don't know, hopefully that helped a little bit as well. So also by declaring, it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to declare to receive funding, but there is sometimes, and it happened through the last few declarations from other sources of funding that came through, and part of their caveat to consider you was, did you declare an emergency? So there is benefits to doing that, but not, you don't need to do it all the time. So you just have to make those decisions at the DOC table. So, anyway, I know I have if you're getting the slide deck after, there's not a lot of words, but pictures are 1,000 words, so there is a lot there. But if anyone has anything that they would like, I can create something for you if you need that for reference, or I'm always available to answer any questions, phone call, email, or whatever. So anyway, that's the end of my presentation. If there's no questions, or if you...
To the chair, I just want to ask one question, Chuck. On some private roads or closed roads or unopened roads, to me, I've ran into situations in the past that no one really places them, like the roads department don't already do that work, and you guys don't do it in case unless there's an emergency. But I know I've ran into situations that fire trucks want to go down the road, and even ambulances, and all of a sudden the roads are you would bring the trucks going down the road. Do you work with the road department on some of these, just to do a periodically check the trees and brushing and all that isn't in the way that you can respond to?
Yeah, so we have historically, they're pretty good. So each road is usually either an owner or a group of people that own that road and maintain that road. But yeah, if we go down a road or discover it, that things need to be, there's a lack of maintenance, we will write a letter to that either that person or organization saying, we've noticed that your tree canopy is too much, or, this road is not supporting, the fire apparatus that it's supposed to. So we do send those letters if we come across those things.
Do you talk to the road department and you say, drive through someday on these certain roads?
It's always been left the responsibility for us. So we do
You
that.
don't know until you try to go through it.
Yeah, we try to do it a little bit proactively. So if I'm out in an area doing, something for another reason or a permanent inspection or whatever, then it'll take a little extra time and just try to cover some of those roads and routes so that we are being proactive and trying to cover that off.
Any other questions from council of Chief Patterson?
Me through, I'm sure. Not really a question, but more of a comment, and it comes from a lot of our community stuff I got about how much the fire department does do, which you brought up, our Santa Claus parade coming up this weekend. The Canada Day parade, the Lions Club Beneville that I got, the fire department's always right there and talking everything to help us out with those things and make things run smooth. They're there for emergency, and I do believe there was one maybe in the summer, because it was pretty hot the day of the car show over here, so I got, but it's really, really appreciated by all people.
Any questions? I have just one. Alarm calls, like security alarm calls, residential alarm calls. Do we have a mechanism in place to charge homeowners for false or unchecked alarms? No.
Yes, we do. We do have a false alarm bylaw. So it allows for it's probably one that should be updated, because it's probably from 1998 or somewhere around there, or early 2000s. So the rates haven't been really adjusted. So that's one of the things that we're looking at to bring back. But it does allow for someone that is trying to do the right thing. So, if they have a false alarm, we're not charging the first time. The second time, we typically, right now, that bylaw says that we don't charge the second time, but they get a letter saying the next time they get charged, and then the fees escalate as more time from there. So that's there, but it could use a little bit of update.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Chief Patterson, for your wordy pictured presentation.
Thank you.
And I believe up next we have Mike Mood, who's going to be presenting on behalf of the Recreation Department. Mike, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, guys and girls. I just want to say congratulations to all your newly elected positions, and playing as I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Adam yet, but I'm sure we will meet here very soon. Just want to give you a little bit of an introduction to myself. I've been working in the Parks and Recreation field for approximately 18 years now, and 13 and a half years with Douro-Dummer Township. So I do come from a good background and lots of knowledge with working with the community and providing a service for everybody. This presentation that you're going to see today is going to be a little bit shorter than maybe some of the other ones. And that's only because we're going to be doing a road tour, and we're going to be stopping at some of these locations. We're going to be chatting some of the projects that we've been doing, and some of the initiatives we've been taking at the facilities. First slide there. So the Parks and Recreation Department, we are an indirect service provider. So we don't currently offer any activity programming. We provide the facilities, all the spaces, and work with organizations to facilitate what they need from us and offer those spaces to the different groups. We do have 3 baseball diamonds in the summer. The next item there is the tennis court and pickleball court. That is a new item that we're excited to provide to the community this year. It will be one single tennis court with 4 pickleball courts painted on there. Over the years since I've been here, I believe in the last 3 or 4 years for sure, I've had a number of inquiries from the public in regards to providing pickleball. So this was our opportunity to facilitate the community's needs, and as well as a couple other items at that park, which we'll see on the tour. We do have 2 soccer fields, various picnic areas. We have 5 play structures spread throughout the township. We have 2 located in Warsaw, 2 at our north and south parks, and we also have 1 in Donald, which was just refurbished last year. I think it's not finalized. We do also have a few water access areas. We do have our back dam where lots of people take their kids to picnic and swim, and they can also launch their kayaks and canoes, or some small boats that can launch larger boats there. But it is well used throughout the summer months, and our Douro North and South Park also has access, which we also have another boat launch there, which facilitates, again, small boats, kayaks, canoes, paddle boards, anything like that, so that you have access there. We also have 5 kilometers of trails at the Robert Johnson Trail. It is a well-used property. With the storm, I'm sure other people have touched upon it. That was one of our trying areas to restore to the public. It was quite the web of trees and a lot of work ahead of our department, but we were able to get it all cleaned up. Although it's kind of a priority over everything, so people, the public could get access to anywhere they had to go. So once we were able to get on top of that, we were able to put on our system. We do have a number of meeting rooms that at both of our facilities that we entertain birthday parties, Christmas parties, meetings, or any conferences or workshops. Some of our rooms have been used for fitness areas for boot camps. And we haven't had any come back since COVID, and COVID has put a damper on a lot of our recreation programs, but there's a huge increase this summer. And going forward, we're constantly receiving calls daily to book these facilities, these rooms, which goes into the ice surface. And so we are looking a lot better in the sense that the public is getting out and using our recreation facilities. Last thing on the list is the banquets, weddings, and conferences. We haven't had a lot of weddings, obviously, because of the COVID lately. Usually we facilitate 3 to 4 for sure weddings this season. We do already have 2 booked for next season, so we are seeing them come around and going ahead with that stuff. So I'm excited. One of the biggest changes in our department this year was the management position. We've had some changes there in the department. We also typically only had another position, which I occupied before, but we have since filled that with 2 part-time or full-time staff members instead of assistant manager. So that is the biggest change. We also run 3 part-time summer staff. We have various bartending staff for our Christmas functions or any weddings through the year. So that, and then this department has access to 1 administrative assistant that's shared with some of these pictures here. It's worth noting, just one down at the bottom, that corner is the fire hall playground, which was installed another 45 years ago. Now, it's lots of use. The Olympia in the corner down there, we just purchased a new Olympia from Chrysler Price. It is actually unique in the sense that we are the only one in the world that has this model. It's a prototype, and the biggest difference is the engine. Typically, we had a Chevy big block engine in those, and now they're having power issues. And so now we've got a couple of the diesel tractor engine in there converted to propane. So we're the guinea pigs, but so far it is worked great. The emissions were lower than they've ever been when we had healthy coming in. They want to have us use it for a year before they put it into production. It's kind of neat. The other picture beside there just shows a little bit of topsoil. Wanted that picture in there because I believe Tom and Ray may be part of that, and Harold knows a little bit about it, but that is the South Park and near the entranceway. When years ago we dropped, I think, about 30 trees that were entangled in vines, overgrowth. You couldn't see the river when you came into the entrance of the parkway, so that area was cleaned up. We have topsoil, and since then we actually do have a number of trees that we've planted in there with working with Boca and their tree planting program. So it's really cleaned up that spot, and when you come into this park, it doesn't look this messy, I guess, in the sense where you have all the vines and dead growth, so it's really cleaned the park up. This just reiterates some of the highlights that I've already touched upon. One of the other bigger parts on this slide is we do look after, currently we cut and maintain 30+ acres of grass. And we are exploring the options to take all of our grass in-house. There will be something about the council in the near future that we will look after our municipal office, our arenas, the non-active cemeteries as well. So it is a bigger undertaking, but I think we will see some savings for the future by us doing this, because it increased costs that will be occurring in the next few years. I just to highlight some pictures at the bottom. Right there is our newly developed park in Donwood. It's at Antonia Park, which shows the play equipment that we put in, working with the Donwood Parks Committee. And the other pictures are, we also did a tree planting program at that location as well. So those are the days of the down putting in those trees. We've had a number of compliments for that park. And a lot of residents are seeing kids that they haven't seen before in that area, just because they're walking farther from the other neighborhoods, and they're very proud of this park. So it's good to see. Some of the events that we do host, and I touched upon this, is auctions, classes, workshops, Christmas parties, corporate family Christmas dinner, meetings, weddings. All these meetings and rentals, our staff meets with every one of them, or we talk to them directly over the phone. We make sure that whatever their needs are, they are there and met before they even show up to the building, whether it's how many tables, how many chairs they want, whether they want it set up a certain way. So that's always been a good thing, and we've always worked hard with the public. We always want to make sure that when they come to the facility, they're satisfied, and when they leave, they're satisfied. So we do take great pride in that part of our department. These are some of the user groups that we currently work with, and we work closely with them as well, not just our room rentals. We have a number of youth programs or organizations. Again, we just try to take all their needs and inquiries and try to make sure that anything that they inquire about is adapted to the best of our abilities, and if it's something that we can accommodate for them. Answer any questions?
Thanks, Mike. Any questions from council? So I'll get the ball rolling. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Mike, I apologize, but I just checked with Harold or something. One of the vote launcher issue, I believe we still have is the most practice pending.
There's pros and crackings, but that's
Those is private, is it not? We don't, don't Knox is on that?
we don't currently look after those areas.
Okay, the one at the Kraken's going on the left.
The roads department is typically taking care of those, and if they feel the worst, our road launches that we can maintain with the years, it's typically just been at our small parks and river access. Team would be all eight.
Through you, Madam Chair. So when Jake has his presentation this afternoon, and we're going on roads tour next week, we will be visiting both of those sites, and it is the Public Works Department that does the maintenance of those sites.
Right, and I apologize, but I kind of was with Harold because I know we did talk one time about the one up in Kraken's, and then parking was always an issue, but we were talking for road, the road was going to take part of Birchview Road on the ditch side on the north side and make the parking area up there, so that's kind of where it was. If it was under your jurisdiction, if that ever got done, so
Yeah.
that'll be for the roads later, but he said, yes, thank you.
Through the chair, I'm Mike Tier. Are we going to be setting up a committee or a board that will be involved with the recreation? Like I have some big concerns, I'm leaving on being with the record now, but will we be setting up through council a committee and person that's going to sit on a board or whatever for
So
or is it too early to talk about that?
it's probably too early to talk about that. I know that, and I can't remember if it was Martina or Elena, I think it was Elena who alluded to going through a strategic plan process and, understanding what are the role of our committees and setting up proper terms of reference for our committees on a going forward basis. So as we embark on those discussions, that will be when. I imagine in the interim, there are probably some very specific concerns that perhaps you can raise with staff on a one-to-one basis, or even ask for some time on the agenda for future council meetings to discuss further.
Because I have talked to, I think I talked to you, right? You should talk to the ones that the different agreements. Like I have a big concern that needs to be addressed instantly somehow, is that the agreements with the canteens not being open. And not just a matter of them not being open, but then the machines there that have nothing in them, the Coke machines, whatever, they have nothing in them. And it's something that I've never been used to seeing all my life. That I think we need to address, and I don't want to maybe speak to you, maybe I'm not supposed to speak to you directly right now, but I mean, it's something we need to address right away. And I'd like to be involved in it. And we'll talk through council about this, and however we're going to do it. But I think we need to, it's a service that we need to provide. So, and I think you appreciate what I'm trying to say. I mean, the minor hockey leagues, unfortunately, they're not coming to the table, the thing is, they expect this. And I really feel bad that it's not there. But again, that comes through council. And, I just want to bring my concern, and I think I've already maybe talked to you, but I do think we've got to somehow address them. Thanks for your
We have worked on putting out a tender for, unfortunately, we had no one apply to offer that service to the community. We do are looking into another option right now. That. We'll have something in order.
thank you for helping me, anyway, even though I don't want to step out of turn, but I would like to help.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, Mike, thanks for your presentation there. Mike, a couple questions. Are we still booking through Booking King online for all of our bookings?
Yes.
So that's something that we could look at and see. I've had different, not really to lobby on this, but I've had different complaints that people say they cannot get ice time. And the question come to me, why they couldn't get ice time? And then they said that the lights were all off during the day. And people were looking for ice time. So I just wondered if the ice time was full, or maybe at the certain time that they were mentioning this, maybe it could have been a cancellation. I'm just kind of curious to know why they were upset about this, but no, and it could have been just a cancellation, that's the reason that they said that nobody was there.
Yeah,
So,
no,
maybe.
I can't speak on which renters or which times they are inquiring about. Typically, we have our ice allocation policy.
Right.
And it speaks to tournaments for township events first, and then our local youth programs, and then our local men's programs, and then we go to the outside youth, and so on. If they inquired about a certain time and they couldn't get that had to have been because it was booked and paid for. Typically, if some of the mornings, I do know that one of our organizations ended up canceling some ice, and under our ice allocation policy, they need to provide us with 1 month's notice. But if we may not have anybody in the facility at that time to reduce staffing, knowing that they aren't showing up for that rental. But if anybody inquires about an ice that they're trying to hand back, we're more than happy, and we will take it off of that user group's timeframe that is in question that they're not using and provide it to one of those members. So if the ice isn't being used, I can't speak on that without seeing it now, but anytime we receive an inquiry, we're happy to take any new rentals. Sometimes there might be a case that they want an hour of ice time at 7 a.m., but we don't have another rental hypothetically until 1 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
To bring in staff for that time to facilitate that 1 hour, it would actually cost them more money. That could be a situation that it might occur. But
Sure. Well, maybe I can, maybe you might be able to answer my questions if I give you just a definite who the user group was and who was looking for ice time, and maybe there's an answer back specific on that they're maybe unaware of. And sure, that'd be great.
Sure, one more time. Our ice machine, is it back in service or is it? Yeah.
it is been fully serviced and is back in operation.
Councillor Walsh?
Yes, to you, ma'am. I understand that we were using your boring or whatever one from the college school, and I was on from Hall County. I got a big thank you from the township for that, because it probably brought us out of the fired pretty good for a short period of time.
Yes, absolutely. It was very good of Lakewood College. They weren't using their icer surfacer at the time because it services their outdoor arena. Because of the weather, they didn't have that in operation. So I do believe that they will be starting up. They either started last week or they're starting up this week. So we will be looking at wrapping up something. Thank you, and
For example, we're really helping each other.
yeah, it's awesome.
Any there?
Yeah, sorry, through you, Madam Chair. Mike, you mentioned that, so we no longer have an assistant manager. So who kind of takes charge when in your holidays or in your absence, or how's that work?
Currently, we do have a lead laborer, that their roles are just reduced compared to what that other position held. So they can look after the day-to-day service and need rental needs at that time. Or we give up the administrative assistant that we can lean on during the inquiries.
Thanks, man.
All right, I don't see any further questions. So thank you, Mike, for your presentation, your overview. We really appreciate that. And I think looking next at the agenda, we're going to have a little bit of a recess for lunch. Is that right?
Yep, so through you, Madam Chair, we'll take a break until 12:30, and then our first presentation starts at 12:40, and then we'll continue with the afternoon. So let's the council and to the chair. We'll take a recess now until 12:40, and then our live stream will come back at that time as well to continue with the presentations.
Do we need a motion to have a recess? No, we just take recess.
Yeah, it's just by consensus.
Are we okay to have recess? Consensus? Thumbs up? All right.
Do you mind lunch?
No, I thought we were going to hear yours.
There's no back on this, right?
For anyone watching and for Adam on the live stream, we'll be back with you just before 12:40.